Now, ladies, we are going into a segment that is really personal to me and to several of you. It's a journey away from home. I am still becoming good at sharing my personal journey. So please excuse me if you don't get the whole of it in this short period or a comprehensive understanding of my journey. But I want to hasten to say that even though bringing you parts of my journey would, help to build credibility in why am I even uh, qualified to speak on this. Yes, but it is not only about me. In this space, I'm here to facilitate your empowerment and to help you to understand that you will go through the challenges and you're better equipped to do so when you learn from others' experiences, when we admit, when we face up to what are these concerns and challenges and barriers that we are encountering, and also find ways to pass them by implementing systems and strategies that would work. So, ladies, let me take a deep breath and let's talk about some parts of my journey. So, many of you know that I am from Trinidad and Tobago, and I was born on the smaller island, which is Tobago. And my family, my mom, my dad, and my brother, very small and loving family. Humble beginnings. My mom, for most of the time, worked inside of the home as a stay-at-home mom. Through the years, she would have had some external, working outside the home. And my father worked multiple jobs. And so yours truly, I inherited that. I inherited that gene, that work hard gene, that mom work from home gene from my parents. But my journey really, in my younger days, my parents gave me wings. They gave us wings to fly, go as far as we want to. So I was never the one to say I will stay at home for the rest of my days. And the first time I migrated away from home, it was to move to Jamaica. And the second time I migrated away from home, it was after I got married. I was newly married and migrated to St. Thomas, US Virgin Islands. Those two experiences were definitely different for several reasons, but let's reflect on the parts of the story that resonated with my leadership journey. I had a deep desire to be the greatest I can be. And the field of study I chose, psychology, is one where, you really had to go to the level of doctoral, attaining the doctorate in a field of psychology, clinical, um, counseling, school psychology, one of those that would allow you to practice. And so I never stopped until I never stopped. It was me pushing forward. And that's the first reason I left my shores, because I went to Jamaica to pursue. But when I left, I was already quite poised as a leader in my field, having the ability to impact many lives, students, parents, and my community, engaging in also community organizations, my church, my youth group, and finding ways to give back. And that is what I carried with me to Jamaica. But of course, there was a culture shift, a culture shock. So some of the challenges I encountered was just having to reorient to the culture there. The way things were done was different. But let me hasten to tell you that while I encountered challenges, the greatest one I believe I had to confront was when my tuition was delayed because the organization funding me had some delays with sending the fees. And yours truly had to occupy the position of leadership. How did I do so? I had to become the leader in my own life. You see, financing my stay in Jamaica was mainly sourced through my funding agency. And now that that funding was pulled back and I did not have the means to fully fund my living expenses and my tuition, I had to do something about it. And that is where the test came. Because first I had to understand, who am I as a leader? We are accustomed to writing resumes, to go and to sell ourselves at a job interview. But this was greater than just a job interview, because I had to first believe that I had something of value to independently offer, meaning I am the whole deal. I am the organization. This is not like I'm a part of an organization and I bring value to the organization. I am the independent consultant. So I had to put myself into the character, into the zone, into the mindset of not being an employee and how I can bring value, but being the prize, being the professional, being the problem solver, being the helper. And navigating that in a culture that was not mine brought me a lot of doubt in, am I going to be accepted? My language is different. I didn't sound Jamaican. Yes, I picked up a few Jamaican words, but I didn't sound Jamaican. Would they accept me? And what if it did not work? Where would I turn? Well, I would let you know that first I had to turn to God. For in him I live and breathe and have my being. And I had to turn to God for strength, because I knew that it was greater than me. And I had to turn to God to trust in what he had allowed me to achieve up to that stage of my life. I had a master's degree and I had a lot of experience. And so I took the step. I took the step and I went out and I met with a few decision makers from a few organizations. And I focused. I focused on the areas where I had strengths, and my strengths were working in the education system. So I focused on the areas where I had strengths. And I quickly realized that quite a bit of the challenges I faced were actually innate. They were in me. They were not so much the cultural barriers, because when I showed up strong, positive, confident, the barriers I thought existed because of cultural differences started to disappear. In fact, they disappeared faster than I thought, because I had the opportunity to be interviewed by newspapers, to write articles. I had the opportunity to work with different schools, helping their teachers through difficult in terms of problems like transitioning in classrooms, dealing with emotional breakdowns with students, and all these different types of concerns. I also was able to land a contract with a family who was taking care of a student who was originally British, but living in the is there in the UK, and I was able to land that contract, and that contract alone was able to pay for so much for me, all of my living expenses. So what I'm saying to you, from that experience, there was okay, I have to come into this new place, and it's new to me because it is a different culture and country. But what supported me was leaning in on my previous experience, where I was able to find my strengths, leaning in on my strengths, and focusing on overcoming the barriers that I had internally: doubt, self doubt, not understanding that I carry more value than. You see, the difference is when you're being employed for a set of skills, but experiences may have surpassed those skills. As you continue your leadership journey, you've gathered so many more talents and skills and experiences, and your knowledge has expanded. So therefore, your wisdom goes beyond just the characteristics or the aspects of your work that you're performing under employment. When you are a leader, Now you have to bring all of those other strengths that you have gained. And of course, your trust in God. But let me hasten to tell you, as I wrap up my part of the journey in the shortest time possible, that the transition into Jamaica was, wow, it was the greatest experience. I think that is why I can confidently, and I always say Jamaica is my second home, because there is where I learned to become. There is where God stretched me and my faith was tested. There is where I had to stand in my strength as a woman, as a leader, as a professional, as a faith driven, Bible believing Christian. I had to stand in those strengths. And that was my first experience of becoming an independent, practicing consultant, leading in a field where there was a need, and I had to overcome the barriers of where's she from. I remember that one time when I was on a bus and I was being squished and squeezed on a Juta bus, and some I said, no, I paid for this seat. I paid for this seat. And the conductor turned and said, where I wander from? Right? To overcome those. So my journey there was wonderful. All and in all, it was wonderful. The challenges, the ups and the downs. Oh, when I have more time, when I write my book, you will learn more about that.